Okay, as promised, this is the lecture on reptiles. Okay, so this is, of course, following the amphibians, and then we have lecture on birds and a lecture on mammals. So basically, we have 3 more lectures in this class, which is good news. This, again, I love this peppermint narwhal little infographic series. This one shows the skeleton of a giraffe, which is just pretty incredible. That second lab exam, we did get into a lot of internal type of morphology, anatomy type of stuff. I'd like to add a component of skeletal, comparative bones and bone structure. Look at this; it's just incredible. Here's the one upper arm bone. Here's those 2 lower arm bones that are fused together, and these are basically the foot bones or toe. I think these are the feet bones, and these are the toe bones here. These huge projections, processes coming off of the vertebrae, which are muscle attachments for the muscles that hold the head up. Right? And these muscles contract, pull on the cervical vertebrae, and hold the head up. But they need these huge places, lots of surface area places to attach. And the other just incredible thing is, it's not that there are any more cervical vertebrae in this animal than we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cervical vertebrae. They're just really modified and very long. So just a great example of specialized bones. Okay, reptiles. I usually think of myself as a herpetologist, and the root of that word comes from herpes, means crawling. And so back in time when the old people of sciences with their powdered wigs were classifying all the animals, they said, well, birds have wings, mammals have hair, fish live in water, and they basically put all the crawling animals into another group. And that would have been all the reptiles and amphibians. But as we've seen, they're very, very different from each other. I mean, you could have everything from a cryptobranchid salamander or a crocodilian, and in fact, really the birds fall into the reptile group too, as we'll see. So it's kind of an artificial grouping, is my point today. Okay, kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, subphylum Vertebrata, class Reptilia. We're going to talk about these 4 orders of reptiles. Okay, and in terms of classifying and grouping these groups or these organisms, the skull has been an important characteristic. Okay, and I'm going to talk about that on the next claygram, but here's some good, basically, these are very good vocabulary terms. Anapsid, diapsid. Apsid is referring to these fenestral openings, which you'll see in the skull. So this organisms, the turtles, have no fenestral openings. And then most of the other reptiles have 2 openings, 2 fenestrae, the diapsids. Squamates, which are reptiles, are snakes, lizards, and then all the crocodilians and the birds. The mammals have, as you'll see, so actually, I'm going to step back a little bit here. Here's what we've worked our way up through. We've talked about the jawless fishes, the jawed fishes, cartilaginous jawed fishes, bony jawed fishes, ray-finned bony fishes, lobe-finned bony fishes, and then splitting from them were the tetrapods. And that's the amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. Talked about the amphibians, now we're on to the reptiles. Okay, so it's a little confusing. Sometimes you see these trees and it kind of feels like they're not related at all, right? But I always look at the top to say, okay, and here at the bottom, what are we looking at? What is the monophyletic clade we're looking at here? This is the presence of an amniotic egg. So all of the organisms on this cladogram are in this bracketed clade called amniota. So these are the tetrapods besides the amphibians. Okay, I'll come right back to the slide, but so another way to look at this, bring it back to something a little more familiar. Here we have the sponges, the radiate animals, all of the lophotrochozoans, all of the ecdysons, all of this together, the protostomes. The other main branch leading out here are the deuterostomes, which include spiny-skinned starfishes, etc. And then these, there's a bunch that's left off of here, right? Because you've got in the chordata, we have two other subphylum, which are not even really shown here. And then we also would have had the jawless fishes, cartilaginous fishes, right? But we're leaving a lot of that off, and we're jumping right to the lobefin fish. These are like coelacanths and lungfishes. And then this would be all the tetrapoda, amphibians, and all these guys. So what this last cladogram is just this branch here. And in fact, we could take the mammal branch. It's shown as a stick here, but it actually branches into the monotremes and the marsupials and the placental mammals, and then those keep branching and branching and branching, right? But you can see different levels of detail. Okay, so if I take this amnio group and we can expand that into these different groups. And again, the point from the last slide with words on it is that largely this amnio on the big level, the amnio tree is broken down based on this skull condition. Okay, so we have three main branches. One branch, the synapsids, we have the orbital opening for the eye, and then there's one other fenestrae. This synapsid group includes all the mammals. Then the branch within the reptilian group is no opening, anapsid, those are the turtles, and then two temporal openings, those are the diapsids, which include crocs and birds, the squamates, tuataros. Okay, so yeah, a lot of this class is just making sense of all this diversity of animals, trying to put them into groups here based on their evolutionary history and their shared characters down here. Okay, so reptiles, those shared characteristics are tough, dry, scaly skin. So I was thinking about the comparison back to other tetrapods. The amphibians have this moist and naked skin. They don't have any keratinized structures like hair or feathers or scales, but reptiles do have this dry, scaly skin. It's watertight. They do not lose a lot of water through their skin, right? They have this amniotic egg, which we'll look at a picture of, but this egg has a shell. It is, it's not air and watertight. They do have amniotic eggs. Like a chicken egg has pores in it that water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, things can come in and out, but it loses water a lot more slowly than something like a fish or an amphibian egg. Right? Jaw is much stronger, larger muscle attachment points, and the copulatory organ. Turtles and crocs have a what's called, it's a penis, I'm just going to say it, but then the squamates have these weird spiky copulatory organs called hemipenes. Let me show you a quick picture of those. This is something else here, hemipenes. Make sure that nobody sees that on my search bar here, search history. Here's some comparative hemipenes. This is the Porthridium, is the hognose pit viper. And look at these things. They're paired, they're spiky, they're freaky, right? They come out of their tail here. So have more than one. Some weird stuff here. Yeah, there's a snake in its hemipenes. Right. So, what is the point, or what is the significance of that? Well, that tells us that all, basically that all, damn it, reptiles have internal fertilization. Okay. And that the sperm and the egg come in contact inside of the female's body. A very efficient circulatory system. Amphibians have 3 chambers, 2 atria, 1 ventricle. Most reptiles have 3 chambers, but some have 4. Crocodilians have 4-chambered hearts. But even the 3-chambered heart of a reptile is more efficient than the 3-chambered heart of an amphibian. Okay, the lungs more well developed, and you kind of see that in the dissection specimens. Those frog lungs are pretty dinky little things compared to the iguanas. More water conserved during excretion. So one of the themes here is basically just more adaptations to deal with this transition to a terrestrial environment. Amphibians do have the 2 lives going on. They have 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on the land, but even so, they're pretty much restricted to relatively moist habitats. You go to a desert, you can find reptiles that can deal with very, probably better than most vertebrates, very low levels of ambient moisture. Part of that, again, is how do you get rid of that nitrogenous waste? Fish just can put it into ammonia and urinate it because there's no shortage of water. Amphibians lose quite a bit of moisture through their excretion. But reptiles, if you've ever seen like a snake or a lizard or a bird poop, that white crystalline stuff is uric acid, and that requires very little in the way of water to remove. Just overall better body support, thicker ribs, thicker bones, more muscles, and a relatively complex nervous system. So here's that amniotic egg. There's the shell. And again, this goes back to the why do you need a copulatory organ? Because you can't lay a chicken egg and then just deposit some sperm onto the egg. It's not going to work. You need to have sperm and egg come together, fertilization, and then that embryo shown inside of here starts developing inside of the shelled egg. As the embryo is developing, it needs a food source, right? And that comes from both the allantois and the yolk, protein and fats. As the embryo metabolizes these, it's going to produce waste. The waste is stored inside of these membranes. As the chick grows, it needs water. That's provided by water inside of these membranes. Those membranes are the chorion, the amnion, and the allantois. So actually, I said the allantois is the protein source. That's albumin is the protein source. Okay, so these internal membranes in an amniotic egg basically allow this developing chick to be alive and be provided with everything it needs to grow outside of the mother's body. Major groups of reptiles. Where's the diversity? The second order, right? About 300 species of turtles. These are anapsids. Squamates include the lizards and snakes. Certainly the highest diversity of species there. We'll talk about the skull of these the squamates and some differences between lizards and snakes. Tuatars is just one species. It's a whole order, though. Very interesting and unique animal. And then the crocodilians, which I'm going to address each of these orders just real briefly, just to give you some idea of the diversity and form and shape and all that. Turtles. I mean, what can you say about turtles, right? Here's the smallest turtle in Georgia. This is bog turtle. Has a little radio transmitter pasted on. This is the largest turtle in Georgia. I think leatherback sea turtles nest in Georgia on some of the beaches, up to 11 feet. Side neck turtles. This is a mata mata, found in South America. Softshell turtles. This is the Yangtze River softshell turtle, which I think is basically functionally extinct at this point. And then you've got these, the giant tortoises. I think I heard the other day it was a Galapagos tortoise that's over 200 years old, still rocking and rolling. Crocodilians. We have crocodiles, alligators, and then these things called gavials or gharials. It's shown at the bottom, very long, narrow snout. They live in Pakistan and India along the rivers. And then there's one species of alligator, the American alligator in the North America, and then there's one species of alligator in China. And they're shown, these are the alligators. Crocodiles, of the 23 species, most of them are crocodiles or things like caimans. We just have one, the American crocodile, which only lives in Florida. We don't have crocodiles in Georgia. Crocs, see the teeth going up, teeth going down, up, down, down, down. Alligators, basically, the teeth just come down. That's one main difference. And then the other thing is, check out how broadly rounded the snout is on the alligator versus the crocodile's more like a V-shaped pointy snout. Lizards, huge diversity in this group. Right? Leaf-tailed geckos. Here's a basilisk. This is people call it the Jesus Christ lizard. They have large surface area on their feet and can run fast enough to not break the surface tension on water. And then that way they can sort of, at least the juveniles can run across water. The Varanidae is a big family of lizards, all of the monitor lizards, including the Komodo dragon. So imagine these habitats at one point had Homo florensis, which was like a hobbit people, really dwarf species of human. There was Stegodon, these tiny little elephants, and 6-foot-long lizards that probably hunted these baby elephants. Amazing. Dracovolans, these little projections of their ribs, which allows them to glide between trees. All the chameleons, just incredible. Snakes. This is Samantha. She was the largest snake in captivity. Bronx Zoo. Reticulated python or Burmese python. Massive, massive animals. Hundreds of pounds. Pit vipers. This is some type of probably South American pit viper. This is a unique organ, not found in any other lineage of vertebrates. It actually integrates and innervates with the optic nerve. And so, of course, we can't really know what a snake experiences, but the thought is that when they see a visual image, overlaying on top of that is a thermal image too. Sea snakes. This is a slug-eating snake. This is a blind snake. They live underground and eat only ants. Yeah. So, snakes are basically just a unique type of lizard. I think this is, these are a phylogeny that shows all the squamates, okay, from here on out. And what's interesting, here's all these different kinds of lizards: amphisbaenids, alligator lizards, teiids. These are the Helodermatidae is the Gila monster, there's venomous lizards, varanids, that's again the Komodo dragon, so on and so forth. But here's one group of lizards is the serpents, right? So it's not that lizards and snakes are on two totally different groups, two different parts of the family tree. They are basically one and the same. A snake is nothing more than a very specialized type of lizard. It's a huge group and so that's why these are not considered different groups of lizards and the snakes. They're all considered squamates. So serpents are a really specialized type of squamate. Okay, and if we think about the snake and how it eats, there's some real challenges here. Say, I've seen timber rattlesnakes eat a full-size chipmunk, and what are the challenges there? Number one, and I've done this to my kids when we do snake shows. Put like a big 6-foot sub in front of them and ask them if they can eat it, or 1 foot long sub. Ask them if they can eat it, and they say, yeah, absolutely. But I say, okay, can you do it with your hands behind your back? Well, maybe they put their hands, try to eat it. Can you swallow it whole without chewing it, right? All the while, if you're eating something like a chipmunk is not going to go easily. It's going to be trying to bite your face, right? So, and then once you get it into your stomach, you got to try to digest this huge bolus of food, right? That's a big challenge for an animal. And that's what snakes accomplish when they eat, right? They don't have limbs. They don't chew their food. They're oftentimes eating live prey. And they specialize really on eating food items with a huge volume. So, what are the adaptations? Here's the challenges. Here's how they overcome these. They have the DNA to produce these adaptive types of structures and organs and things. Number one, they have very flexible skulls, which allows them to deal with eating large food items and allows them to basically move their head over the food as they eat it. Okay, I'm going to show you pictures of the quadrate dentary bones on the next slide. And when I talk about flexible skulls, they also have this thing called glottis, which is pretty far anterior in their mouth, which allows them to breathe in front of the food item, which is basically blocking their trachea. Okay, so the trachea doesn't end or begin or whatever at the back of the mouth. It does because of this glottis at the front of the mouth. And then venom. Venom is a amazing adaptation to these challenges, and I'll try to explain that a little bit. Here's some snake skulls, right? We see here is the quadrate bone, right? Shown here, here, here. Quadrate bone in human skulls is just all this is fused together. But in snake skulls, the maxillary bone is not attached to the skull. The quadrate bone is not attached. So when the snake opens its mouth, the quadrate bone swivels and allows the mouth to open very, very wide. Okay, so really they come unhinged and are capable of a huge gape size. The maxillary bones here, because they're movable, they actually, as they're eating their prey, they use those maxillary bones to pull their head up around the food item. They don't pull the food item into their mouth. They actually walk the skull up around the food item. Okay, and then these dentary bones on the bottom, they are not attached to each other except by skin and maybe a ligament. So one side of the lower jaw is independent of the other side of the lower jaw, which allows them to stretch that. Okay, here's that glottis. So you could have a whole cottontail rabbit in your mouth here, blocking your trachea for most animals except the trachea continues and exits. The opening is here in the glottis. So that allows them to breathe with this huge food item in their mouth. And then finally, again, that venom um, is a cocktail of different protein enzymes that are injected into the food and start to digest the food before the food is swallowed. So usually a venomous snake, like say a copperhead here, maybe would strike a frog, inject venom, the frog hops off, dies, and then the copperhead scent tracks the frog and then eats it when it's dead, already starting to be digested. Or, eating a mouse. You don't deal with a live mouse, you envenomate it, allow it to go die, scent track it, and then eat it. And venom is found in a lot of these lineages. There are venomous, of course, serpents. There are venomous verandid lizards. The Gila monsters are venomous. So venom pops up in multiple places in this phylogeny. We have a couple of legless lizards here in Cherokee County. Well, one species, and I've seen them from time to time. How can you tell the difference between a snake or a lizard? All right, if you look at these guys, can you see the differences? Well, one thing is that snakes don't have external ears. They can't hear any airborne sound, versus this glass lizard has an ear opening. This glass lizard has an ear opening. So these two are the lizards. Also, if you flip them over and you look at the scales on their ventral scales, on the lizard, they pretty much look like they do on the top. On the snake, they have enlarged scales on their ventral, on their venter. So that was order Chelonia, the turtles, order Crocodilia, the crocodiles, order Squamata, snakes and lizards, order Sphenodontia. These are the tuataras from New Zealand. Very peculiar. I've seen actually, those of you guys who tuned in to see Tim Herman, he showed me my first tuatara at the Toledo Zoo. They are maybe like the size of an iguana, kind of chunky, very low body temperature. They look like a lizard, but they are very distantly related to lizards. They have the most well-developed, what's called a parietal, or third eye, of all of their chordates. Parietal eye is found, this is an iguana, it's found in, this is a bullfrog, and humans have the remnants of a parietal eye. In the tuatara, this is, at least as a juvenile, is well developed, has its own retina and lens, and it's thought that this parietal eye probably helps to keep track of light and dark cycles, and seems to have some sensory abilities that are useful for thermal regulation. So that's it. That again, this order here, Sphenodontia, Sphenodontida. Okay, and that brings us through these major orders of reptiles. Okay, just want to end with this little story about conservation. Right, probably here in Georgia, I would say the biggest problem for reptiles are roads. Snakes are definitely demonized by most people, and if they find their way out onto a road, they're going to be toast. And snakes move a lot. I've had pine snakes here on campus that move all the way from down below the F-Pack to all the way over on Pleasant Arbor Road, all the way, I mean, just miles these things will move. And they encounter a lot of roads along the way. In the past, in Georgia, there used to be these things called rattlesnake roundups, where imagine people would go to for tortoise burrows, take a can of gasoline and a funnel and a garden hose and pump gasoline down into these burrows and flush out all the animals, included eastern diamondback rattlesnakes and canebrake rattlesnakes, and they would just gather them all up and have this big event. Usually all of the snakes would get killed in the end, skinned for leather, et cetera, et cetera. Georgia, the people were, some of my colleagues were successful in putting an end to this. They now have, I think it's in Claxton, it's called the Claxton Wildlife Festival. And what they do is that the people who, see these two parties, people who like snakes, the rattlesnake roundup people, whether they like snakes or not, they're making money off this roundup. The snake people say, okay, don't catch wild snakes. We'll provide you with X amount of snakes to display during the wildlife festival, and at the end of that, you can give this back to us. These are pet snakes from zoos and personal collections and things that allowed people that have the wildlife festival to attract people there. And there's a lot of education that happens, which I think is a really good story. Still, though, in Alabama, Alabama, which is down here in southern Alabama, still has this roundup each year. Right? They have a beauty contest and greasy pole climbing contest, buck dancing. It's a culture. It is a culture in these deep south areas. I don't want to be patronizing to these people that have been doing this for a long time. It's just sad that a lot of rattlesnakes die from this event. The one comment here, they let all the snakes go unless they are hurt. But I guarantee they're not keeping track of individual snakes. Snake A came from this exact site. And if you move snakes around, it's very detrimental to those animals. They are really tuned to their environment. And if you move them from one place to another, they tend to be looking to get back to their original place. And again, they run across roads and just get smacked there. The one guy says, I guess this is a redneck fence, really and truly, but we just want to show people about snakes. But again, I value that viewpoint, but this is not what you want to show people about snakes, right? This is just very damaging to people's view of these important animals. Right? So that's my soapbox for the day. But I want to be sure to share the hopeful story about what happened in Georgia, and I think that that's a good compromise, and everybody gets the win. So, but that's about reptiles, and I'm gonna